From the Gonzo Today newsroom, this is Memos from the National Affairs Desk. Presented by Gonzo Today. www.gonzotoday.com. The weird have just turned pro.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Gonzo Today's Memos from the National Affairs Desk. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffurious Higgason. This installment is being brought to you by electricity. That's right, electricity. Bringing you things electrically. Now turning to the news. A former CIA officer was convicted Monday of leaking information to New York Times reporter James Reason, allegedly because he was pissed about being fired. 47-year-old Jeffrey Sterling of O'Fallon, Missouri is to be sentenced coming up on April 24th. For now, he remains out of prison on bail. Sterling had worked on a CIA project to hinder Iran's nuclear program. Prosecutors said he gave the material to Reason for revenge after he was fired. Reason later used the material for his 2006 book, State of War. Sterling sued the agency, claiming discrimination, and got into a dispute with officials about publishing his own memoirs. The Times decided not to publish Reason's information on the Iran program because officials in the administration of George W. Bush said that doing so would harm U.S. interests. The U.S. Justice Department won a court fight to force Reason to testify under subpoena, but prosecutors eventually decided to not call the reporter to the stand, who had said he'd rather go to jail than take the witness stand. Those who did testify included CIA officers who were shielded from view by a gray screen. I wonder if they're back there doing shadow puppets. Right? Kind of take the edge off the whole proceedings. Prosecutor and defense exchanged blows over whether details in one chapter of Reason's book showed Sterling's influence. Prosecutors argued that he was the only person who knew all the information, while Sterling's lawyers said some details occurred after Sterling was shit-canned. The United States Senate approved the controversial Keystone XL pipeline 62-36 on Thursday, defying a promise by President Obama to veto the bill. The gloves are off, the gauntlet is down, the light has gone out in the fridge, and the Jell-O is jiggling. 9 Democrats voted in favor of Keystone, but the bill still does not have enough support to override a presidential veto. The House passed a similar bill recently, but its members must decide whether to merge the two bills or to vote on the Senate measure. The Senate bill includes an amendment aimed at protecting private property. Republican U.S. Senator Mike Enzi said in a statement, he said Keystone will, quote, help grow our economy and create tens of thousands of jobs, end quote. Keystone, proposed by TransCanada 6 years ago, would carry Canadian crude oil to the United States to terminals in Houston and Port Arthur in Texas, and also into southern Illinois. You know, I live in southern Illinois, and believe me, folks around here are always teeming for a gigantic oil field phallus. You know, what better way to represent virility in a throbbing economy? Surprise, surprise, all in your eyes. Most of the system has been completed, but the Keystone XL between Alberta and Steel City, Nebraska is still in the planning stages. Environmentalists have been fighting the pipeline and have allegedly invoked the spirit of ironized coating. News out of Rancho Mirage, California this week. The Koch brothers promised to spend $889 million on Republican candidates in 2016, and they may have set off a financial arms race between the two parties. The money would come from Freedom Partners Chamber of Commerce, which organizes twice yearly meetings for the large donors who share the Koch's conservative libertarian political views. Politico reported the total figure was leaked by attendees at the winter meeting this week in California, which featured a debate between Republican senators Marco Rubio of Florida, Ted Cruz of Texas, and Rand Paul of Kentucky. Charles and David Koch each own 42% of Koch Industries and have fortunes estimated at around $40 billion each. The Republican National Committee reported spending $404 million in 2012, while the campaigns of President Obama and his Republican challenger Mitt Romney cost about $1 billion each. In 2013, the Federal Election Commission estimated the total cost of the presidential race and contest for House and Senate at around $7 billion. About $3.2 billion was spent by candidates, $2.1 billion by political action committees and other outside groups, and $2 billion by the parties. Democrats tried to make the Koch brothers an issue in 2014. While the party failed to stop the Republican tide in congressional and state elections, the presidential electorate is different, and Democratic candidates have won a majority of the popular vote since 1992 in every election except 2004. A spokesman for the Democratic National Committee suggested the Koch brothers will remain a campaign issue in his reaction to Politico. Quote, "Wait, you mean a bunch of billionaires are going to try to spend nearly $1 billion in pocket change to try to buy a president to rig the system for them and then give them massive tax breaks that no one else gets? I'm shocked." End quote. Democratic fundraisers, although none of them wanted to be quoted by name, told CNN that the $889 billion figure can be used to sharpen pitches to their donors. Also, news out of Washington this week, Mitt Romney said Friday he was removing himself from consideration from the 2016 Republican presidential nomination. Luckily, no suicides were reported after the announcement. Romney, he was 67 this year, and he was also the 2012 Republican nominee. The former governor of Massachusetts and all-around penis wrinkle announced the decision in two conference calls, one to a circle of advisors and another one to a large group of supporters. In a statement, Romney said he believed he would win the Republican Party's nomination again. His decision frees donations and volunteers that could gravitate to other potential presidential candidates. Many Romney loyalists were reluctant to endorse any possible opponents until he clarified his plans. And others remained skeptical that Romney, symbolic of an image of the Republican Party as old and out of touch, would not be the ideal opponent for expected Democratic Party nominee Hillary Clinton. Romney remains deeply admired by much of his party, including its donors, except that one guy that had his name tattooed on his face. He's not going to support him, is what he said earlier this week. And also the decision not to run primary positions him as something as a kingmaker within the party. It also establishes a former Florida Governor Jeb Bush as the frontrunner of candidates preferred by the party establishment. We'll be back right after this.
Monsters do have their place. In the zoo, in your nightmares, in the deep, in your favorite horror movies. But not in your living room, on your TV. Don't let pay TV be the monster in your living room. Pay TV and cable TV companies are seeking the right to charge you for the very programs you now get free. If you want to stop pay TV and save free television, sign the petition in the lobby of this theater. Let your lawmakers know how you feel in the fight against pay TV and cable TV.
The Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame held its induction ceremony this week on Wednesday. This year's inductees were Hunter S. Thompson, the Hall's first living inductee, Wendell Berry. This year's class also included Guy Davenport, Elizabeth Hardwick, Jim Wayne Miller, and F.E. Waller-Smith. Presenters included University of Kentucky professor Eric Reese, former director of the Carnegie Center, Jan Eisenhower, Western Kentucky University professor, and the widow of Jim Wayne Miller, Mary Ellen Miller, Kentucky's poet laureate Frank X. Walker, and Louisville native poet and Gonzo Today's poetry editor Ron Whitehead. The Kentucky Writers Hall of Fame was created to recognize Kentucky writers whose work reflects the character and culture of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and to educate Kentuckians and the rest of us about the state's abounding literary heritage. And here's your official Gonzofest update. 2015 marks the 5th year of Gonzofest Louisville, and it will be weirder than ever. This year there'll be live music from regional and local musicians and bands on 2 stages, spoken word, poetry readings, unveiling of drawings for Hunter S. Thompson's statue that's supposed to be maybe put up later on, live art. They're going to have craft vendors from the Flea Off Market, food by the Monkey's Uncle Grill featuring the Little Cheesers, Premiere of Gonzofest 2014's full-length documentary. Squall's Puppeteers will also be on hand that Saturday for the parade. They'll be having a Gonzo photo booth thanks to Yelp of Louisville. Gonzofest Louisville 2015 merchandise will be all around, so you can buy all that up and, take it home. I got a T-shirt, or a hat, something like that. And you can also receive free entry to the official after party with your Gonzofest 2015 ticket. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going to be going on that weekend in Louisville, and we will keep you up to date as it comes to us. Tickets are on sale now at the Monkey Wrench for an early bird special price of only $10. Money earned from Gonzofest Louisville 2015 supports efforts to build a bronze statue of Hunter S. Thompson in Louisville. Proceeds will also be benefiting the Gonzo Foundation. Well, that wraps up this Memos from the National Affairs Desk. I'm Dr. Jeffurious Higgason. Thanks for listening. We're on the internet at gonzotoday.com. Also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. This has been a production of Gonzo Today and gonzotoday.com. Gonzo Today, the weird have just turned pro. And I leave you right now with another voice out of the past, Jackie Moms Mabley. Sleep tight, kids.
Man bought him one of them new-fashioned guns, decided he was going quail hunting, So he was walking all through the woods. He didn't spy no quail, so he wandered over into a graveyard, And so after a while, he seen a big flock of whale, and he aimed his gun, and when the gun went off, it kicked him back to the open grave, He was down there, he says, cold down here. It's cold down here. So a wino happened to be going home, He said, I think I'll take a shortcut to the graveyard. He walking through the graveyard and he heard somebody say, it's cold down here. He looked around. He said, no wonder you're cold. You done kicked all the dirt off of me. Put some dirt on. Everybody crazy. Do you know if you see anybody acting normal nowadays, they probably just not well. I never seen so many people go in insanity in my life. Man walked into the psychiatrist's office, he said, oh my goodness. The psychiatrist said, what's the matter? He said, butterflies flying all over me. The psychiatrist said, well, what the hell, don't blow them on me. A Jewish fella and a Chinaman were standing on the corner arguing about who the greatest man that ever lived. An Irishman walked up. He said, if you tell me who the greatest man that ever lived, I'll give you $500 in cash. Little Chinaman said, chink cut check. He said, nah. Little Jewish fellow said, St. Patrick. He said, you're right. Reached his hand in his pocket, gave him the $500 and walked away. Little Jewish fellow looked at the $500. He said, I had Moses in mind, but business is business.
The news you have just heard was a digest of Press Association dispatches. Further details will be found in your newspapers.